Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're enjoying lunch. Some good conversation. It's great to see the room so full. We hope you're having a great time at Passive House Canada's annual conference here in beautiful Hamilton. We have Continue Eating. We have an interesting panel discussion today that highlights a new initiative that both Passive House Canada and the Passive House Network, our American friends, have been working on. And we want to present it to you today in a way that we hope will stimulate some conversation and some feedback and some queries. So I will reiterate that we're not quite there yet, and we need your help. We need your feedback. Without further ado, we want to talk to you about the Building Performance Assurance Council. Well, what is that? The genesis of the Building Performance Assurance Council, back in 2021, our two organizations expressed a shared vision to scale up Passive House implementation to meet both UN and IPCC targets, and all of the legislation that falls out of that, both in the United States and Canada. That's the genesis, the thinking behind it. We agreed a brand neutral, outcome-focused approach achieving multiple goals was the way to go. And we said that we knew that the agreed action had to be taken to address greenwashing, and that we had a mutual understanding that led to the forming of what today is the Building Performance Assurance Council. Our goal is really quite simple, to advocate for building outcomes identified by IPCC, UN agencies, and others necessary for nations to meet their Paris Agreement commitments and achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. You can read details if you'd love to visit our website, which is just launched. And I'll have the URL at the end of the presentation. But we have a paper, What is Required of Buildings, on our website that explains a lot about what we're talking about. The international passive house level of energy efficiency has been identified by UN agencies, the IPCC, and the IEA as the base level of efficiency to improve over time. So accordingly, that's what BPAC will advocate for regarding energy efficiency. Other standards that we'll bring into the library at some point. Well, first we're starting with energy efficiency, and we'll bring other standards and best practices to the library. There's a list of a few right there. It's by no means an exhaustive list, and I'm sure you will have some suggestions for us on what you need in your business to get the job done, as they say. So BPAC is not creating a new standard. It will support existing standards rather than create new ones. It's going to develop a library of vetted standards and tools capable of delivering the required outcomes. Standard setting bodies are invited to accredit our quality assurance process. Not a new standard. We are all about, as our name would suggest, quality assurance, however. So we don't offer certification. We will not offer certification. The process will be quite simple, that a BPAC reviewer will undertake the QA process on behalf of BPAC, the building owner, the funder, and or regulator, and can issue a statement confirming the anticipated performance of the building. During our pilot, which has recently launched, that statement is in the form of the Climate Smart Scorecard. And again, all of this is on the BPAC website for your information. Our initial focus, education, public policy, project quality assurance, database development, and I know Craig will want to jump on that one because that's really critical to all of us achieving our goals, and continuing outreach to other industry groups and energy models and service providers. So the status, our website is live. Verification pilots have launched for both single-family homes and large complex buildings. Outreach is underway to governments and industry leaders across North America. But I'll reiterate that it's really early days, and we wanted to bring this to the table today before it was fully formed so that we could get your thoughts, your impact, your input, and your feedback. And you can do that through our website. There's an info at button you can click. Let us know what you think about the idea and about where you think we need to go with it. And so this is the publication I referenced earlier, What's Required of Buildings. And I'd suggest you give it a read. We've got it up on the UN's ABC reference site. It's on our library, our BPAC library as well. So I'm going to stop there with that final slide that has our URL. Please go check it out and let us know what your thoughts are, because we really need your impact or your input so that we have maximum impact and we can deliver on what our countries need to meet both UN, IPCC, and our federal government and provincial, state legislation with regards to climate change. So I'll stop there. We've got a great panel here, and we're only going to take a half hour or so of your time today, and then we'll let you get on with dessert and coffee. I want to introduce the people in the audience today. To my far left, your far right, is Lois Arena. She is Director of Passive House Services at Stephen Winters Associates. She has over 25 years of experience in the building science field. She holds both U.S. and international passive house consultant certifications and is currently consulting on some of the largest and most difficult passive house projects in the world. And next to Lois is Evelyn Bouchard. Evelyn is the chair of Passive House Canada, and I should say Lois is the director of the Passive House Network. Evelyn Bouchard is our chair of Passive House Canada. She is a course instructor, and she also is a practicing architect and a principal at Tandem Architecture Écologique. Exactly. You can hear the French speakers in the audience laughing. My brain is tired, okay? Next we have, sorry about that. Next we have Matt Bowers. And since 2013, Matt has worked as a certified passive house consultant and tradesperson and HERS rater. In 2017, Matt started his own company, Rochester Passive House Consulting, specializing in high-performance buildings. Matt started certifying passive houses back in 2019 and is a passive house trainer for the Passive House Network and is experienced in a multitude of passive house analysis tools, including thermal bridge analysis, embodied carbon, and creating long-term building retrofit plans. And finally, to my immediate left is Craig Stevenson. Craig is president of the Oros Group, which is a technology company based in Pittsburgh. Craig is a founding member and vice president of the Passive House Pennsylvania chapter and a member of CEOs for Sustainability. Craig sits on the City of Pittsburgh Clean Tech Roundtable and P4 Performance Measures Committee. He's also a committee member with the AIA Plus 2030 Committee on the Environment and the chair of Passive House Network. So welcome to you all. I thought I would just ask them some questions and get their feedback as we move ahead. So I've given you a bit of a background about how BPAC got where it is today, but I want to turn the floor over to Craig to begin with to ask, what the main thing is you want BPAC to do for the building industry in North America and perhaps even around the world. Craig, what are your opening thoughts?
Thanks, Chris. Is my mic on? Can you hear me? Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Let me start by saying thank you to Chris and the Passive House Canada board for putting on this conference. For those of you who are virtual and not here, you should be here. Our secret superpower is a network. That's what Passive House is all about. And being at this conference, you can really experience that. So wanted to thank you. I also wanted to reinforce that, as board chair for Passive House Network, which is a US-based organization that advocates for Passive House, we look to our north to see what you guys are doing up here in Canada, and you guys are really setting the bar. The work that you guys have done over the last bunch of years around Passive House is noteworthy, and you're sort of leading the market in this regard. So we value our relationship with Passive House Canada, which brings me to the question that I was asked. It's why are we doing this with BPAC and Passive House Network and Passive House Canada? Because we're stronger together. I became board chair of Passive House Network about 1.5 2 years ago. And one of the reasons why I became board chair of Passive House Network is to scale Passive House. That's as simple as it is. And that's all we want to do. We want to make Passive House best practices in the United States. And we work very closely with the Passive House Canada organization. We're very proud of that. And they have the same exact goal. And when we looked at this and we started saying to ourselves, what is the bottleneck, right? What's the impediment for us scaling Passive House? And one of it is getting our buildings through the process of Passive House review, assessment, and certification. We have to fix it. And what worked in the beginning when we started the Passive House movement doesn't work at scale. And that's really what BPAC is all about. BPAC is about creating a alternative pathway for building assurance that we can move our buildings through the systems. You know, right now we're pushing hundreds of buildings through our system annually. We are looking at an inflection point right now, at least in the United States, and I can speak for the United States, that we're talking about tens of thousands of buildings coming through this system. And the system needs to be built so it can scale to that level. So when we reached up to our friends at Passive House Canada and we said, this is what we're thinking about, they're like, well, we're thinking about the same thing. And we're looking at them and saying, we're stronger together. Why don't we do something that can help us support scaling Passive House in North America? And that's really the impetus of why BPAC was created and what we're trying to accomplish.
Good, thank you. And I'll go right down to the far end of our panel here and ask Lois, you know, can you tell us what's happening in the U.S. and why this kind of initiative is needed?
Sure. There's some really exciting stuff happening. I think most of you know that New York City has passed a local law 97 in the last few years, which is requiring buildings to be below a certain carbon cap. And well, if any of you attend my session later today, a little plug there, we have some data from buildings that show that Passive House consistently brings you below that cap, right? So it's a pathway forward. People in New York know it's a pathway forward. We have more and more buildings coming through the system, but we can't get them through fast enough. We also have really good incentives. There's not just this stick. We have really good incentives for building to Passive House, but they can't collect on those incentives until they get their final certification ultimately. And that's stopping our government agencies from distributing the funds that they need to distribute on a timely basis. We all know that. If governments can't spend their funds right in a quick enough manner, those funds get taken away, right? So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And then we have states like Massachusetts that actually put Passive House in their law, in their code. So just in the past few months, Massachusetts released a stretch code, which is an optional code, right? But they have several jurisdictions in the state that automatically adopt this stretch code. And 11 of the jurisdictions, including Boston, have adopted it. And it actually requires multifamily buildings to be built to Passive House. And it also created a TEDI, like you have in your Toronto code, that is for the commercial side, that is so stringent, it's probably easier to go to Passive House for those buildings as well. So these initiatives have hit the ground, and we are just getting inundated with calls for feasibility studies and proposals. And when they start to get in the pipeline, we're not going to be able to process them fast enough. And we've been watching this happen. We've been seeing it. We've been working with the entities, the programs, and the codes to develop these. So we knew they were coming. And so that was part of the impetus here. I'm on the board, as Craig said, and Chris said that, you know, we saw this and we're like, we have to do something, because if there's bottlenecks and we fail, Passive House fails, right? They're going to go somewhere else. So and the other thing I wanted to mention, which is BPAC is going to be a really great source of training for anybody, practitioners, builders, architects. It's going to be North American based processes, materials, construction types, which we've been lacking in our materials to date. So we're really excited about that for our trades and for our architects and our teams.
Great, thanks. And Evelyn, how important is it that our organizations start giving really good advice for things beyond operational carbon?
So I think especially everyone in this room can agree that passive house is the first step. That is non-negotiable. We're not watering that down or stepping back from that commitment in any way. But we are seeing growing demand and more questions about embodied carbon. So start by designing a passive house, then look at how you put that together, where those materials are sourced. And because this is a rapidly evolving query or field, like the first time it came to my attention was at our 2017 conference, we're seeing a lot of parallel processes being developed, different databases being developed, and methodologies of calculating that, which is great. And there may be more than one that's valid. The idea is really to centralize all of the best practices that are aligned with our Paris Accord targets in one place, so that I, as a practitioner, can go to that one place and know that if I pick any of those standards for different aspects of my design, I'm getting something that is vetted, that's not greenwashing, that works, and that'll deliver quantifiable results. Because there's a lot of noise right now. And, governments don't necessarily know where to turn. Practitioners don't necessarily know where to turn. So the idea here is that, let's have the best of the best do the homework of figuring out which standards get us where we need to be in terms of our Paris Accord targets, and then make that a resource that's accessible to the industry as a whole.
Great, thank you. Matt, over to you. So I know you sit on the BPAC technical committee. Can you give us a description of this verification process with BPAC? How you see it being faster or more transparent, and ultimately, will it be easier to verify a building?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thank you for having me today. The process for certifying or reviewing a building really isn't going to change very much. We still want to make sure that we have the QA process down. But what will change with BPAC is going to be having a verifiable process down with a large database of projects that we can continually pull from and compare and readjust our certification or review process, so that as this continues to scale up and continues to grow, we will have more types of buildings, right? Lois had mentioned multifamily buildings and commercial buildings. And so we're looking at a large range of different building types. And once we have these through the process, we'll have access to that information so that we can use those same assumptions, those same values in future projects as more of those similar building types come through the pipeline. We're also developing a single family house or a Part 9 building pathway that's going to really, really speed up the process. And really what we don't want to happen is the long back and forth with different certifying bodies to check and double check and recheck all of the work. We really want to be able to streamline this process. And that's really what's going to get this to scale.
Okay, thanks, Matt. But back to you, Craig, and I think we can touch on one of your favorite topics. One of the deliverables of BPAC is a very extensive database. So what can you tell us about this database and a few of its purposes?
Thank you. So as most of you probably already know, data is the new commodity, right? It's where everything is heading. The cost of meters and sensors are becoming way more affordable, and we're deploying them in buildings. And what we want to do at BPAC is we want to track and trend that. So the technology exists today to track data, file data, metadata, time series data, connect the buildings to BPAC and understand from an hourly basis how that building is performing so we can track it. We need that data for many things. We need it to convince decision makers what we already know through practice, that Passive House works. We need it to convince policymakers that this is the right pathway for those to embrace, to decarbonize buildings in the most cost affordable way possible. We need it for our communities. We ask ourselves questions constantly today that we need better answers to. How many buildings are Passive House certified? Where are they certified? How many square feet? How many buildings are electrified? What is the criteria that's been reviewed between standards that's been accepted or given exceptions to projects? We need to track and trend all that stuff. We need a place to do it. The technology exists today to do it. So one of the fundamental core principles of BPAC is creating this database and having buildings connect to it. It may sound daunting to those that are not familiar with data. I would suggest and urge you to look at Reset Air as the template. Reset Air is an air quality standard. It's world-class air quality levels, and they track and trend continuous air monitoring in buildings. And you have to connect your buildings to Reset Air to show them the data, and then you become certified. BPAC is taking that same methodology, and we're taking it to the energy side of the discussion in day one. But we can connect to buildings and we can secure data. So where we go from there is going to be part of our learning curve and part of how we develop BPAC. But in the minimum, we need to understand how buildings are performing today. To get buildings certified in day one isn't enough. Like Lois has said all too often, it's about outcome-based criteria, but it's not point-in-time outcome. It's how is the buildings operating over the next 50 years? Is Passive House working? We know through practice that it is, and we need to prove that out, and the database will give us that proof.
Good. Thank you. Evelyn, how do you see BPAC's role in decarbonizing buildings in Canada?
Well, I think if there's one word I've heard over and over again in the past day and a half, it's inertia. And I know it's not the inertia of anyone in this room. You're all doing amazing, fast work. But the reality is that the IPCC report that came out in 2014, version number 5, named Passive House as a necessary pathway forward. We should be aiming for this. And that was almost 10 years ago, and it's still not reflected in our codes. So we can't get there with half measures. We need to move a lot faster. We need to scale up exponentially. And so we need to build up the framework that's robust enough to handle that and share information and share what we're learning quickly in a kind of centralized way so that we can share those outcomes and those real results with policymakers. And that's why I'm really excited to be collaborating with our neighbors to the south as well, because we have a lot of things in common in terms of how we build. And looking at policy models there, what's worked there makes a ton of sense instead of just being insular and ignoring what's happening around us. So I think there's tremendous potential for collaboration there, knowledge sharing, collaboration, and best practices.
Great, thank you. And over to Matt. Matt, I know you're a Passive House certifier, so the question I have for you is how can BPAC support certifiers?
Well, as BPAC scales up, there's going to be a really heavy demand for more reviewers or certifiers. So it's not necessarily taking work away from certifiers, it's creating more work for more certifiers to do. So, as we all get through this together, there's certainly opportunity for experienced people in different building types and different softwares to become a reviewer to help scale this process.
Great. So more opportunity.
More
That's what I'm
opportunity.
hearing, and that's fantastic. Lois, back to you with the final individual question. What's BPAC going to do for your customers? What will it mean to your customers?
It's going to mean consistency. So, we're making sure from the technical committee side that we've set in place a process of standard control, right? Consistent, every certain number of years, whatever, you're going to have the new standard come out. So you're going to know what version you're in. There's not going to be any question. When we make a decision on how you go forward with a unique building type, any other building that comes up with that unique building type can also follow those methods. So it costs them less to use me because I don't have to spend that much time rehashing and rehashing and rehashing the same question. It's going to speed up their process because they're not going to have to wait for decisions as long as they do now. And they're going to be able to access their financial gains from incentives and that sort of support from the states and the cities. Like, I mean, if we're in Massachusetts and we're waiting on a TCO for Passive House certification, that can't be the thing, right? Like there has to be another pathway there that would crush the industry. So it's going to mean consistency, speed, and reliability.
Very good. So I have a question for all of you. And given we promised the folks we'd only take a half hour of their lunch hour, and we know they're interested in dessert and coffee, We have 5 minutes left. But in your opinions, as briefly as possible, what does BPAC need to get right? And Craig, I'm going to start with you, and we'll go this way.
Our goal is to scale. That's it. It's as simple as that. What we need from you is we need your patience, your support. You know, you need to understand we're not sitting here today with all the answers. We know there's a problem and we're fixing the problem. And the fact that Passivhaus Network and Passivhaus Canada have gotten together with unanimous consent through each of our boards to do this shows you that we listen really, really well. We understand the problem. And we're looking for your support to help us fix the problem. Our goal is simply to scale Passivhaus. We want what everybody in here in this room wants. The same thing every organization, PHI, wants. We want to scale Passivhaus. We can't do it through the current certification process. It's not fit. It's not suitable to handle that volume of work. BPAC is built to handle that volume of work. The database is built to give us the data feedback that we need to continue to scale. So we're here in a transparent way to explain to everybody what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. I would urge all of you to reach out to any of us here, go to the website, talk to, all of the people that are developing BPAC or on the website, reach out to them. Feel free to ask us questions. We listen really well. We don't have all the answers, but we know where we're going and we know how to scale this.
Thanks. Matt.
I would say the one thing BPAC needs to get right amongst many things is transparency. Many different building types have many different assumptions. Some projects get a different value to use than other projects. It's really, really important for everybody to understand what those values are, where they came from. And so it's really the transparency that BPAC needs to get in order to really make this work.
And Evelyn.
So I was also going to say transparency, but I'll elaborate a bit more on that. I think what attracted me to Passivhaus in the first place was that clear, rigorous transparency. When I'm in my PHPP, I can trace any calculation, understand what's going on, look under the hood, figure it out. And that clarity is something that we need to bring into BPAC, because that's the root of, I think, what got us all here in the first place. So we need to make sure that we're true to that. And so as we're rolling this out, we need to think about how do we keep it open, clear, and build trust, as Craig said.
Great. And Lois.
Continued quality control at scale. So I haven't seen really one bad Passivhaus project that really went for certification. Some of them maybe haven't made it, but they're all turned out really good. And that's very consistent across our portfolio. We need to be able to do that quickly, but still consistently, or we're going to lose our partners' faith in us, right? So we need to make sure we have consistent quality output. Yeah.
Very good. Well, listen, thank you very much. And we've got a minute left. And I just want to reiterate that we wanted to hold this conversation with you today in the early days of setting BPAC up, so that you can go to our website, explore a bit more, give us your feedback. This isn't the first time you'll be hearing from us. We're planning on communicating with our members and with the broader industry, and really working hard to get your input and your buy-in to what we're trying to do. So I will say thank you today, and let you get back to your desserts and coffee before we head out to the next conference. But yes, okay, I have a special something happening right now. We have a live feed from City Housing Hamilton's 257 King William project. It's the first craning. Here we go. So somewhere on this piece of paper, it told us how many panels were going in. Uh-oh. Oh, it's working. Okay, it's... Oh, technology. Oh, yeah. Oh, great. Here's an expert to fill us in on what's happening.
So yeah, this is just last minute, and it's actually my coworker's project. 256 King William, it's on the tour tomorrow. Those are the first 2 modules landed there. There'll be 24 units total as it's done, and it's all going to be done over this week, basically, all erected in site. We still need to do the cladding and a few other things and insulation on the outside, so there's still some work on site. But that module has like toilets in it and interior finishes and everything. So hopefully we'll be able to see. Right now it's extremely boring because I think we're waiting for the next module to back up in front of the crane there. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see that lined up for this conference.
Is
So
the multi-vistas site a public site?
no,
Okay.
no, we can't give out the login details to everybody. So
Hey guys, I tried.
We could have put that in our database, you know that. Well, listen, while we're waiting for things to back up and swing in the air, et cetera, or maybe not swing in the air, I just wanted to thank the panel again and wish you a good conference, wish you all a good conference afternoon. And I expect we'll keep the feet up for a little bit so that we can all cheer when things are in the air. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bob and the gang have so much fun. Working together, they get the job done. Bob the